A shrill, agonized cry tore through the morning stillness. In the desolate Wyoming plains, the rising sun revealed a horrific scene. An adult female pronghorn antelope, her hind leg tangled tightly in a rusted steel wire snare. Blood stained the dirt beneath her, her chest heaved in panic, and her eyes rolled wide in primal terror. Her frantic thrashing only tightened the grip of the cruel trap. The wind carried the scent of fear as birds scattered from a nearby juniper tree. A crow cawed once, harsh and loud, as if to mark the tragedy. In the distance, a young ranger named Clara spotted movement through her binoculars. She gasped. "No, no," she muttered, her boots kicking up dust as she sprinted toward the dying cries. She dropped to her knees, whispering, "I've got you, I'm here." Her trembling hands hovered over the wire, unsure whether to act or wait for backup. The antelope bleated weakly. The camera lingers on her leg, raw, torn, and trembling. Then pans to Clara's eyes, fierce, terrified, determined. Clara's breath caught in her throat as she studied the wound. The snare was no ordinary trap. It had barbs, deliberate and cruel. "This was made to kill slowly," she whispered. The antelope shifted slightly, pain etched into every movement. Clara reached into her kit, pulling out antiseptic and gauze. She hesitated, then called on the radio. "Ranger Base, I've located a female pronghorn in active distress. Severe snare wound. Request immediate vet dispatch. Coordinates coming." Her voice cracked at the end. "Please hurry." Static answered first, then a distant voice confirmed. As she waited, Clara gently poured antiseptic over the wound. The antelope cried out, but didn't flinch away. "You're so brave," Clara said, her voice thick with emotion. The sunrise cast a long shadow behind them, two small beings against a massive, uncaring world. She worked silently now. Gauze in place, pressure steady. Clara knew the clock was ticking. If infection hadn't already begun, it soon would. The wound stank of rust and blood. She studied the snare's anchor point, tightly wrapped around a sagebrush root. It would take real force to cut it free. The antelope's ears twitched at every sound. "I know it hurts," Clara murmured. "But help is coming." In her head, memories surfaced. Her father's voice telling her stories of the antelope's speed, the way they could outrun coyotes. But this one couldn't even stand. Clara's fingers wrapped around the cable, testing the tension. She grabbed her wire cutters. "Okay, on 3, she said softly, as if the animal could understand. Her hand shook. 1, 2, 3, Clara said, and the cutter bit into metal. A spark. A snap. The snare loosened, but not enough. The wire only partially severed, still biting into muscle. Clara cursed, voice trembling. The antelope let out a sharp cry and collapsed into the dirt, exhausted. Clara's hands were slick with blood now. She changed position, placing herself between the sun and the antelope, offering shade. She pressed a second cutter harder. Her shoulders strained, teeth clenched. Another snap. This time, the wire gave. Clara exhaled sharply. The limb was free. "You're free," she whispered. But her relief was short-lived. Now came the harder part, stabilizing, transporting, and surviving long enough for help to arrive. Clara looked around the empty plains, suddenly very aware of how alone she was. The pronghorn lay limp, breathing shallow. Clara leaned close, watching for signs of shock. "Hang in there," she said. She unzipped her pack and removed a thermal blanket, carefully covering the antelope's flank. "I've seen animals come back from worse," she whispered, more to herself than the animal. The wind picked up slightly, stirring dust across the ground. Clara's eyes scanned the horizon for signs of the rescue team. Nothing. She tapped the radio again. "Still waiting on that vet team. I'm stabilizing as best I can." Her voice was firmer now, resolve settling in. "We're not losing her." The camera pulls back as Clara sits in silence, one hand resting on the antelope's side, a lifeline between human and beast, framed by endless sky and sun-scorched earth. Just hours earlier, The pronghorn had stood tall against the horizon, dew glistening on her golden coat. The morning had been quiet, serene. She grazed peacefully alongside her herd, ears twitching at the faintest sounds, alert, yet calm. The sun crept slowly over the ridgeline, igniting the prairie in golden hues. A gust of wind carried distant rustles, the soft drumming of hooves in rhythm, the living heartbeat of the plains. But curiosity drew her to the fringe of the open field, toward a shady patch near a brushy outcrop. A strange scent, faint but unnatural, beckoned her closer. She stepped forward, and that was all it took. With a sudden snap, pain surged through her leg. Her scream shattered the morning quiet. Birds scattered in a frenzy. Her herd bolted without hesitation, vanishing into the horizon. She was alone, trapped, and the sky, once beautiful, felt unbearably vast. Miles away, Clara was just beginning her routine patrol. She adjusted the straps on her pack and secured her notebook. The ranger station's worn map showed this quadrant had recent reports of illegal activity, rumors, mostly, about poachers leaving traps behind. Today, Clara muttered, we go quiet, we go careful. Her boots crunched softly over the dry grass. She paused often, scanning with trained eyes, looking not just for animals, but signs of human disruption, broken twigs, unnatural patterns, foreign scents in the wind. She knelt by a shallow trail. Fresh tracks, too wide for coyotes, too narrow for elk. Something's moved through recently, she whispered. Then, the radio crackled faintly. All clear so far, a voice said. Clara clicked her mic. Copy. I'll check the northwest slope. Meet you at checkpoint 6. She had no idea what was waiting for her just beyond the ridge. Back at the site of the trap, time passed painfully. The antelope's strength began to ebb. Her breathing was shallow, and her head now rested fully on the ground. Insects buzzed near the bloodied wound, and her once keen ears lay limp against her neck. Vultures circled far above. The prairie was silent again, save for the occasional gust of wind stirring dry grass. A rabbit darted by but stopped short, sensing something wrong. The sun, once her companion, now scorched without mercy. She blinked slowly, vision blurred. Her mind wandered to the safety of the herd, to wide sprints across open plains. Was this where it ended? Her body had gone still, but a flicker of life still pulsed in her chest. A hope she couldn't name, holding on. As Clara approached the ridgeline, she caught a distant, unnatural sound, muffled but urgent. She froze, heart quickening. Raising her binoculars, she swept the prairie until her gaze locked onto a shape. No, she whispered. Her legs moved before she told them to. Bounding over rocks and roots, she reached the crest and saw the full horror. The antelope, writhing faintly. The twisted snare. The blood. Clara descended the slope in a full sprint. The wind howled through the valley, carrying her shouted words. Hold on, I'm coming. The scene snapped into motion. Bag dropped, hands gloved, knees in the dirt. She didn't think, she reacted. The weight of every training drill crashed down into this moment. Every second felt like fire. The animal turned its head slightly, just enough for Clara to meet its eye. Time slowed. Fear met resolve. Now, beside the antelope, Clara barely breathed. Her eyes scanned the wound. Blood-barbed wire, exposed flesh. Her instinct screamed, act fast. But panic tried to sneak in. Stay with me, she whispered, brushing the antelope's face. Its eye blinked. That was enough. Clara radioed. This is Ranger Clara Jennings. Immediate emergency. Female pronghorn caught in wire snare. Location marked. Severe bleeding. She dropped the radio and pulled antiseptic and gauze from her kit. She remembered her instructor's voice from years ago. Stay calm, or they won't. She pressed cloth to the wound. The antelope gasped, but didn't struggle. Clara spoke gently. You're going to make it, I promise. For a moment, there was only wind and breath. Life hadn't left yet, and as long as there was breath, Clara wouldn't let go. The sun climbed higher, casting a brutal glare across the plains. Clara squinted against the light, sweat collecting at her brow. Her hands ached from pressure and tension. "Where are they?" she muttered, checking the time. The rescue team was overdue. She raised her radio again, voice sharper now. "This is Clara. Still at scene. No contact with vet team. Situation deteriorating." Silence. Then static. Then nothing. She cursed under her breath. The antelope was breathing in short bursts, pain written across every movement. Clara dug through her field kit for more gauze, but she was running low. A knot of dread tightened in her chest. She stared at the motionless radio. "Please work," she whispered, slamming the button again. Nothing. Only the wind replied. Alone in the endless expanse, Clara made a decision. She would not leave. No matter what. Not now. A voice crackled to life, distant and patchy. "Clara. Terrain issue. Stuck near East Ridge. ETA unknown." Clara closed her eyes, inhaled slowly. She was truly on her own. She looked down at the antelope, whose eyes fluttered weakly. "I'm staying with you," Clara said aloud. "No matter how long it takes." She pulled a tarp from her gear and rigged it above them, using 2 branches and her field poles. It wasn't much, but it blocked the worst of the sun. Then she took her canteen and gently poured water onto a cloth, placing it along the animal's neck. "Cool her down," she whispered. The landscape shimmered with heat. In the distance, a hawk circled. "You're not taking her," Clara muttered. She gripped the radio again. "Do better. Get here. Please." Suddenly, tires crunched in the distance. Clara stood, hope rising, but it flickered and died just as fast. A dusty pickup truck emerged over the ridge, not the rescue team. Local ranchers. 2 men stepped out, one adjusting a faded cap, the other lighting a cigarette. Clara waved them over. "Injured animal," she called. "I need help stabilizing her." They approached slowly, eyes fixed on the antelope. The older man exhaled smoke and said, "It's just a pronghorn." Clara stiffened. "She's a living being, and she's tagged, likely part of a study." The younger one shrugged. "That's a predator magnet now." Clara blocked their view. "1. I don't need your opinions. I need water and tools. Can you help or not?" Silence. Then the older man muttered, "You're on your own, sweetheart." And with that, they got back in and drove off. Dust cloud trailing behind their truck, Clara stood in disbelief. Her fists clenched at her sides. "Cowards," she whispered. She returned to the antelope, her anger slowly turning into resolve. She repositioned the thermal blanket, shielding more of the antelope's side. Every little effort mattered. Flies buzzed thick around the wound now. Clara pulled out her small insect netting and secured it gently over the exposed leg. She had no more antiseptic, no antibiotics. She tore her last alcohol wipe and dabbed carefully, whispering encouragement. "You're strong, stronger than them." A buzz from the radio brought her to her feet. "Clara, we're rerouting, approaching from Southern Plain. Still 2 hours out." Her throat tightened. "Copy. I'll hold," she replied. But 2 hours felt like eternity in this heat. She had no backup, only instinct and determination. An hour passed. Then, another. Clara's limbs ached from crouching, but she never moved far. She offered the antelope water with a soaked cloth, carefully placing it near her mouth. The pronghorn stirred faintly, just enough to nuzzle it. It wasn't much, but it was something. Clara smiled faintly, wiping her face with a dusty sleeve. "That's it, girl. Just stay with me." She began sketching a quick field report, hands shaking slightly. Midway through, her pencil broke. She looked up, across the prairie, across the horizon, and saw nothing but light and dust. For a moment, her heart faltered. But then she looked back at the antelope and saw the rise and fall of her chest. Slow, but steady. Clara nodded to herself. You breathe, I fight, deal. The world had slowed into blurs of color and vibration. From the pronghorn's perspective, pain had become a constant hum. Her sight faded in and out, light, shadow, then light again. Her ears caught tones more than voices, a soft rhythm in the air, the low beat of something near. A scent lingered, foreign, but not threatening. Clara. The antelope could no longer run, but instinct still stirred beneath the pain. Fight or flight, breath or stillness. She remembered wind in her fur, remembered racing beside her herd, the way her hooves had skimmed the ground like a song. Now she couldn't move. But something deep inside, ancient, wild, unbroken, refused to surrender. A flicker of memory, a moment. Her mother teaching her to jump, to run, to endure. The voice of instinct whispered, survive. She blinked once, slow. The face beside her didn't belong to prey or predator. Just presence. From her vantage, Clara watched the antelope stir. A flutter of eyelids. A twitch of the flank. Life. But there was something more. Something odd. Clara leaned in and noticed a small bump just above the animal's left leg, partly obscured by fur and dried blood. She parted the hair gently. Her breath caught. No way! Embedded in the hide was a tiny chip, metallic, faintly scuffed. Clara's training kicked in. She pulled a scanner from her vest and ran it over the mark. A soft beep. Identification tag confirmed. The screen blinked. Specimen 4406, Protected Study Group, B. Clara's pulse surged. This wasn't just an antelope. This was a tagged, tracked animal, part of the conservation initiative launched 6 months ago. Its survival wasn't just emotional. It was critical. This pronghorn carried data, lineage, and the future of a threatened population. Clara's mission had just changed. Clara grabbed the radio with renewed urgency. Ranger Base, this is Jennings. The injured antelope is tagged. Repeat, tagged female from Study Group B, priority conservation target. We cannot lose her. Her voice cut through static like lightning. For a moment, there was silence. Then came the reply. Copy that, Clara. Data confirms. Priority reassigned. We're notifying Wildlife Command. Sit tight. Clara sat back, exhaling slowly. She glanced at the antelope, still breathing, still fighting. You're more important than you know, she whispered. Her eyes scanned the horizon again. The sky was beginning to shift, clouds building along the west. A storm? Maybe. The land was never kind for long. But now, Clara wasn't just saving a life. She was guarding a key to ecological balance. And she'd do it alone if she had to. In the haze of the antelope's mind, time ceased to exist. Memories and present blurred. She heard distant hoofbeats, phantoms of her herd. She was young again, sprinting beside her sister, dodging rocks, outpacing wind. The prairie had once been her kingdom. But pain dragged her back to now, to heat, stillness, struggle. Yet something in her stirred again. A scent. That gentle presence, Clara, remained constant. Not threat. Not prey. A strange protector. In the animal's world, trust was never given. But now, the line between wild and human trembled. The antelope's breathing changed, more even. Clara felt it. She leaned in, whispering, "That's it. Stay with me." 2 worlds, usually divided by silence and fear, touched for one impossible second. The storm winds picked up. A flash of thunder rolled far off. But here, in this fragile moment, there was connection. Real and raw. Clara checked the GPS one last time. Rescue ETA, 48 minutes. Not soon enough, but close. She refastened the gauze and used her multi-tool to tighten the temporary splint. Thunder rolled louder now, closer. Clara glanced at the sky, purple streaks cutting across distant clouds. The wind tasted of rain. She placed her jacket over the antelope for extra warmth. "Almost there," she said softly. Then she stood and began to scan the nearby terrain. If poachers set this snare, there might be more. And if there were more traps, others could be hurt. She didn't move far, just enough to flag potential danger zones. But she never took her eyes off the antelope for long. The animal's eyes followed her now, faintly aware. The storm would soon hit. But Clara wasn't running. She was rooted like the earth. This was her line in the dust. As the afternoon waned, the prairie seemed to hold its breath. Dark clouds gathered like silent sentinels, and the wind whispered warnings through the dry grass. Clara crouched close to the antelope, her fingers brushing gently over the quivering flank. She could feel the weight of the coming storm pressing down. Around them, shadows lengthened. In the distance, a low growl broke the stillness, the unmistakable sound of a predator. Clara's eyes scanned quickly. Coyotes, she thought. Hungry, opportunistic. The antelope's shallow breaths quickened. Clara grabbed a sturdy branch and began drawing a circle in the dirt, a faint barrier against the invisible threat. "You're not alone," she whispered fiercely. Coyote's howl rose again, closer now. The stakes were climbing, and the night would be long. Rain began as a whisper, then hammered down in cold sheets. Clara pulled her jacket tighter, shielding the antelope as best she could beneath the tarp. The earth turned to slick mud, making footing treacherous. "No, ka!" Thunder rolled overhead, drowning out all other sounds. Clara's fingers worked quickly, securing the blanket and reapplying pressure to the wound to stem fresh bleeding. Water dripped from her hair, mixing with dirt and sweat. She glanced toward the ridge, hoping for the rescue team. But only darkness answered. The storm was relentless, and so was Clara's resolve. "Just hold on," she urged. "Help is coming, we won't let you go." Lightning flashed, illuminating the raw wound and the fierce determination in Clara's eyes. Survival was a battle of wills now. The rain slowed, turning to a drizzle as night crept closer. Clara lit a small campfire nearby, its glow a fragile shield against the creeping cold and predators drawn by scent. The antelope stirred slightly, eyes flickering with life and pain. Clara sang softly, an old lullaby her mother had taught her, words lost to time, but melody comforted. She kept one eye on the dark tree line, where shadows shifted unnaturally. Suddenly, rustling nearby froze her blood. She grabbed a flashlight, beam cutting through the gloom. A pair of glowing eyes stared back. "Coyote," circling cautiously. Clara's voice rose, low and steady. "Go on, you're not welcome here." The animal hesitated, then slinked away. Clara exhaled, clutching her knees. The night was a silent battleground. The fight wasn't over. Morning light seeped through thick clouds as Clara wrapped the antelope in a dry thermal blanket, hands trembling from cold and exhaustion. She knew she couldn't do this alone much longer. The radio crackled, finally. "Clara, ETA 30 minutes," came the weary voice of the rescue team. Relief washed over her, but so did a new fear. How many more traps? She rose, scanning the terrain, eyes sharp for any glint of wire or unnatural shapes. Her heart pounded. The land held secrets, and she was determined to uncover them. Turning back to the antelope, she whispered, "Almost there. Hold on." Every second now counted. The silent threat of the snare had shifted into a larger battle, one that extended beyond this one animal, beyond this one day. As the rescue team's vehicle finally appeared, Clara's heart leapt. The antelope's breathing was faint but steady. She helped the team approach, briefing them quickly on the animal's condition and location of the snare. The vets worked swiftly, administering pain relief and preparing the antelope for transport. Clara stood back for a moment, her gaze fixed on the animal's eyes, still flickering with life. She whispered a quiet promise. "You'll run free again." But as the vehicle rumbled away, Clara caught a glimpse of something disturbing. A half-hidden snare wire glinting in the grass nearby. Her jaw tightened. The fight was far from over. This was just the beginning. The rain had ceased, leaving only a soft mist hanging over the prairie. Clara sat, exhausted, her eyes following the rescue team as they gently lifted the pronghorn onto a stretcher. The storm had passed, but the damage was done. The snare, now loosened and marked as evidence, was a brutal reminder of the silent war being waged against the wildlife. Clara's hands shook as she wiped her face, her gaze hardening. "It's not over," she muttered, watching the animal's fragile form being loaded into the vehicle. The team turned to leave, but Clara remained behind, staring into the distance, knowing that somewhere out there, more traps waited, more innocent creatures were at risk. Her mission was far from finished, and this victory felt more like a fragile pause in a larger battle. The vehicle disappeared over the horizon, and Clara stood alone again in the vast empty wilderness, a quiet vow forming in her heart. The day stretched on with oppressive quiet, and Clara's thoughts raced as she surveyed the area. The rescue vehicle had barely left the prairie when her radio crackled again. "Clara, come in. We've got a report of more snare activity near the South Ridge." Clara's heart pounded in her chest. Just when she thought she could breathe, another call to action came. She checked the map. "I'm heading there now," she said firmly, clicking off the radio. Her legs were sore, but the thought of more traps kept her moving. She wasn't going to let this happen again, not to another creature. As she marched through the wet prairie, a dark feeling lingered in her chest. The storm had passed, but the storm of poachers, hidden dangers, and the weight of responsibility had only just begun. Hours later, Clara reached the South Ridge, where she stopped and surveyed the area. The sun had begun to set, casting long shadows across the land. Her eyes darted from one area of the ridge to another, searching for signs, anything that could point to hidden traps. As she moved closer to a dense patch of brush, her heart skipped a beat. There, among the low sagebrush, she saw it. The unmistakable glint of steel. Clara's pulse quickened. Another snare. She crouched low, pulling her field knife from her pack, her senses heightened as the evening air grew colder. Her hands were steady, but her mind raced. Was this part of a larger network? She inspected the trap, taking note of the marks on the wire. This wasn't random. Whoever had set this was organized, and Clara would find them. The snare was carefully deactivated, but the sense of urgency still clung to Clara. As she stood, she swept her gaze across the surrounding area, searching for more signs of poacher activity. The land was eerily quiet, the air still, but Clara knew better than to assume it was safe. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of distant tires crunching on gravel. She turned sharply, eyes scanning the horizon. A vehicle was approaching. As it drew nearer, her stomach tightened. Poachers. The headlights cut through the twilight, but as the vehicle slowed to a stop, Clara recognized it, the rescue team. Relief flooded through her, but it was brief. They weren't here just for the pronghorn anymore. They were here to help her clear the area, to stop what was unfolding. She nodded, determination setting in once more. There was work to do. The team worked quickly, methodically. They dismantled several more traps, and Clara led them through the landscape, pointing out where she'd found the first snare. The sense of camaraderie was brief but palpable, as everyone knew how much more there was to do. The air had grown thick with anticipation, but the work wasn't over. Clara's voice remained steady, but inside a fire burned. They weren't just removing traps, they were fighting back against a hidden enemy, one who would stop at nothing to harm the land and its creatures. As the last snare was cut free, and the team made their way back to their vehicles, Clara took a moment to survey the now quiet landscape. The battle had been won today, but the war was far from over. This was only the beginning. Weeks passed since the rescue, but the memory of that day lingered like a shadow in Clara's mind. She sat in her small office at the ranger station, staring out the window at the endless prairie, the sun dipping low in the sky. The antelope had survived, and the team had found and dismantled the network of traps that had threatened the wildlife. But Clara knew this was just one victory in an ongoing fight. The wildlife preservation team had commended her efforts, but Clara felt an ache, a weight of responsibility that hadn't been lifted. In the quiet moments, she often wondered how many other creatures like the pronghorn were still out there, waiting to be found. As the phone rang, she picked it up with a sigh. "Clara here." The voice on the other end was calm, but the words brought a spark of hope. "We spotted the pronghorn. She's alive and well." Clara's heart lifted as she made her way back to the field. The news of the pronghorn's survival, and the fact that she had been spotted alive and well, gave Clara renewed strength. It was a reminder of why she did what she did, why she fought so hard, even when everything seemed hopeless. As Clara drove through the vast plains, the wind whipping across the open road, her thoughts drifted to the pronghorn. Was she still part of the herd? Had she healed fully? And what of the other animals still suffering at the hands of poachers? Clara didn't have all the answers, but she knew one thing for certain. This was her fight, and she would continue it. The rolling hills stretched before her, endless and unforgiving, but she wasn't alone anymore. The animals had her, just as she had them. A few days later, Clara stood in the same field where she had rescued the pronghorn. The land had changed with the seasons. Grass now rich and green, the earth alive with the hum of insects. In the distance, a lone pronghorn appeared on the horizon. Clara's breath caught in her throat as she watched the familiar creature move gracefully across the land. It was her, no doubt about it. The antelope had returned to the plains where she belonged. Clara smiled to herself, feeling a rush of pride. The pronghorn was not just a survivor, but a symbol of resilience, of hope in the face of adversity. The battle had been hard, but the land was healing, and so were its creatures. Clara knew this moment would stay with her forever. Her connection to this land and its animals was unbreakable. Back at the ranger station, Clara received a call from the wildlife team. They had found and rescued a number of other animals caught in illegal traps. The network of poachers had been dismantled, but the impact of their actions was still being felt. Clara felt a sense of pride for the work they had done, but she also knew the danger was far from over. As long as there were people willing to exploit the land, the fight would continue. Yet for every animal they saved, for every trap they removed, they were one step closer to restoring balance. As she ended the call, Clara stepped outside. The sky above was vast, endless. She knew there was still much to do, but for the first time in a long while, she felt hopeful. The horizon stretched out before her, waiting for the next battle, and she was ready. The final image of the day was burned into Clara's mind. The pronghorn, now strong and thriving, moving freely across the plains. She watched from a distance as the animal bounded gracefully through the tall grass, a fleeting shadow against the setting sun. It was a moment of pure freedom, a victory that would resonate for years to come. Clara felt a sense of peace, knowing that she had played a part in that survival. She stood alone, but she no longer felt isolated. The animals, the land, and her mission were all one, intertwined in a delicate balance. With a final deep breath, Clara turned and walked back to the station. There was always more to do, but for tonight, she allowed herself to simply be, knowing she had made a difference in the world. It was a quiet, powerful kind of victory, one that would stay with her for the rest of her life.